Welcome back, everybody. Scott Stevens here with a look at weather. Scott's weather is kind of what we've titled it, at least for now, until something better seems to pop up. And heck, in 2020, something surprising, something new is always popping up. Just like the derecho event that rolled across the upper Midwest, we knew there was a risk of severe weather, but you just don't know. And from my background, where I can see that there's some aspect of technologies in the skies, you kind of tend to wonder just really what's going on in the long run, because there tends to be some other agenda, some other thing at play, rather than just Mother Nature doing her thing. Although she's definitely doing a thing, but there's some play in there. All right, I kind of want to talk about some things today. We're going to start with Twitter, as we often do. We hit that first, and then look at some of the stories from the videos that have been shared out there into the public space. Some are crazy, some are unusual, some are a bit strange, but we'll start with that here and head on over. And it's that time of year where lightning tends to just come out of the blue, and sometimes you can feel the hair stand up. Not that I've ever had this happen to me, but it happens, and that is the testimony of those who have had close calls with lightning. But this one probably the clearest that I have seen. And we've shared a few with you over the past couple of weeks, but this particular one, literally a bolt from the blue. And the nearest thunderstorm, as indicated by radar, was 8 miles away. So you just kind of don't know where the thing is going to strike. It's just that kind of unpredictable. So that was kind of a crazy shot. And the as I kind of said in the write-up for the show, the tropics are now coming back alive. We've got Tropical Depression 11. If it ends up with the letter J, then it will be the earliest on record. Now, again, our record only goes back 100 some odd years, and there's an infinite amount of history prior to that. But nonetheless, we will have achieved a J storm, a number 9 storm, by the middle of August, and that is significant. So it would bring the Lesser Antilles and just north of Puerto Rico, northeast of Puerto Rico, as we move towards the middle to end part of the weekend, if the forecast track remains intact, and it would be Josephine, would be the name. As we look not quite at the tropics, but still other levels of the atmosphere, we've got a circulation center sitting off the coast of South Carolina. And we'll see if that kind of begins to translate down and we see some tropical evolution. If some of that mid-level circulation can get to the surface, then we might have another event, and that would be number 10 on our hands. And then here we are, 15 years after the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter reached orbit and is peering through the Martian atmosphere and looking down to the incredible surface down below. All kinds of things that we don't have answers to. I mean, just this structure alone, this geography, unusual in its own right. It kind of looks like a bit of a landslide that has occurred there, and so much of it has the signature or the look of water. If you look at the bottom of a pond, and this being a dust devil as seen from above, as there's enough wind, there's enough circulation, that we can get electrical connections and sparks of electricity with that circulating dust or the spinning dust. And then just the dunes. It's just a fascinating, fascinating place. And those that have the money to invest in space-based research, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, are doing their best to direct those private resources that they've been able to do through their years of business and get private industry into space, which was kind of the basis for a lot of the movies that we have, where you have private entities out mining in the asteroid belt, or mining in the moons, or setting up this and that, doing the exploration. That it isn't government; it ends up being private industry, and in a way, that's kind of what we're seeing. And just because we have mentioned China in a little while does not mean that it isn't happening. The flood goes on, and these are fresh cars that obviously weren't flooded, earlier. Otherwise, they would have been moved by their owners. But the rains still keep coming and are anticipated and forecast to continue to come for a little while yet. Longest monsoon in 33 years battles the Korean Peninsula. And we've been talking about this for 2 weeks now, leaving scores dead and 7,000 homeless, as the land can only hold so much water before that extra water weight on the soils, it wants to go. Water is drawn by gravity to the lowest location. And when you saturate the hillsides with weeks of rainfall, this is the inevitable result. Cosmic ray increases remarkably as solar activity shows a persistent decline, resembling the Dalton minimum of 1790 to 1830. That was a significant period of very cool weather. So as we see this story unfold, it is my anticipation, my opinion, my expectation that this will be the weather story of the coming decades, as the sun has dictated climate since it began and still does so to this day. And because science has not been present for a Dalton minimum, a mini ice age, a grand solar minimum, that we will not recognize those signals, those signs, those telltale events until it's hindsight, until we can see in hindsight that the climate has been altered and that this is our inevitable future. So I'm kind of looking through the weather as it happens today, and primarily this flooding across so many continents as being one of those signs. As the atmosphere tends to cool, as we see a change in the cosmic rays, that flooding is one of those primary byproducts of the change in climate. Ultimately, as the heat comes out of the ocean, the atmosphere will dry out, and then flooding will turn to a drier period of time. All right, but that isn't today. That isn't just yet. Let's roll this forward and look mostly at Australia, where they have been dealing with winter and winter weather and some pretty good rains. And there's another event coming the end of this week and into next week that is a major winter event that will continue to add rainfall totals to the significant ones that they have received lately. So it's good news. You know, we have our period of drought, and then we've got to green things up. That's just kind of the cycles. The heat that had been in Siberia that indicated or allowed them to record their first plus 100 degree Fahrenheit high, even though they don't use the English system over there in metrics, that is in place, and it will get squeezed out as cold high pressure kind of comes in and then settles into Western Europe, and it may draw their growing season to a close by the end of the month. That's just some of the early indicators we're getting. Stateside, triple-digit heat throughout much of Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, especially central and southern Arizona, through the central valleys, at least central and lower central valleys of California, and then back into Cedar City, Utah, and then bumping up 100 degrees as we move into the high plains of Montana. And that heat has allowed for the generation of some severe thunderstorms. Another one of those crazy events happening in Minnesota now. This plume right here, if you can see that as the sun angle gets a little bit lower, the smoke gets accentuated, and that's what all that is coming off this fire in western Colorado. And this another round of cool air working into the Pacific Northwest. We'll look at those thunderstorms in Minnesota, and just the way the waves, just kind of these counteracting waves, have really contributed. Gravity waves, artificial waves, I don't know. All I can do is see them and point them out to you. And they're enhancing that thunderstorm activity that has been at times severe there. And then into western Colorado, that fire north of Grand Junction just continues to go. They've got all the crews on there that they can have. You know, we're dealing with those overblowing tops as heat in Siberia. It's happening, Karen. Heat in Siberia, but heat in Siberia in August, there's one other word for that: temporary. Temporary. As the sun sinks, beginning its quickest 3 months descent into the southern latitudes, where they're embracing the arrival of spring. As their days get longer, ours get shorter. It's an even balance. There's no extra this or that in this game. All right, there's the severe weather. At times, the warnings were far more widespread a few hours back, but in the southeastern states, those have turned into flooding, and the monsoon trying to get going into the southwest. It just having a tough time of it this year. We get the storms pop up, they last maybe 20, 30 minutes at tops, and then they peter on out, and then it's 3 or 4 days before they get another round. Not so in the southeast, where their earlier drought that had begun earlier in the season just is gone. Now we're dealing with localized flooding in the Appalachians. The southern Appalachians. Today, the heat and humidity, in place indicated by dew points better than about 15 Celsius or 60 degrees Fahrenheit by the green. That kind of snakes up into Canada. Get into the high plains, it's not so bad, but the dry has allowed the temperatures to just skyrocket. The northeast, a cool high pressure, cool-ish high pressure. It's still August, in place across the eastern lakes, providing them with some light northerly winds. The pressure gradient's not all that strong, so the winds are tolerable. What we're most concerned about come tomorrow will likely be fire weather in the Central Plains states, or excuse me, the Central Rockies from southern Idaho through southern Wyoming, where things are, quite honestly, the green grasses from spring have now dried out. They've reached the maturity, the seed stages has passed, and so now the vegetation is just drying out, as is so typical for this time of year. So mid-August is allowing for that scenario to happen through Wyoming. All right, the GFS, as we move through the end of the week, cool through Western Canada, and then that cool weather will settle into the southeastern states as we move right in through there, about 10 days out. A nice northerly breeze will drop their temperatures 5 to 10 degrees cooler than normal, and the heat remains out west as the kids head back into school as the last 10 days of August approach. As far as record temperatures, this time it's all in the heat. This is tomorrow from Texas to say Pueblo and Colorado Springs, Colorado at about 96 degrees, El Paso at 105, Roswell also 105 degrees. So it's definitely very, very warm, and that's going to go on. I see you guys in there. Intriguing weather on Mars. Mars has fascinated me, Karen. It really has. The imagery that's come back from there, because we've got incredible tools out there. We've got great tech, and the rovers have been in place and running for the better part of 15 years, and they were only anticipated to last 3, 4, 5 years tops. But the tech is still going. They get mysterious cleanings now and again to allow the solar panels to recharge, and then they show us very curious geographic and maybe even, I want to say, architectural debris remains, maybe even fossilized things. If you look at Mars anomalies, that is 2 weekends guaranteed, and then you're hooked. That there's a reason why we sent those probes there, to see exactly what we're looking at, that they've known that there are curious things on these other planets. And archaeologically, who wouldn't want to go look around a dry planet, a safe planet? Safe maybe, maybe it isn't, who knows? And I know someone does, because we have the tech to get there, and to get there very, very quickly. Far, far quicker than the public NASA is comfortable in saying. All right. Enough on that. That's a whole nother show that I would just adore kind of jumping into. But the heat goes on through the southwest through the weekend and into early next week as the cool air settles into the southeast, and the heat kind of resets itself out west. And the upside to that is ultimately crop maturity for the western states. The grains are nearly done. They're coming into harvest, and we'll wrap up soon. And then the eastern states that have been warm and dry will get another bit of a cool spell, kind of some refreshing rains to keep those crops maturing. And we just got to get all this done. We've got to come to harvest, considering the food issues that are now beginning to develop around the planet. And that's what I want to talk about in 45 minutes on Another Perspective. It is my history in not quite CSA or community supported agricultural, but we have to do and may be asked to do, not by choice, but by circumstance, in securing our own individual food future. We need it at least once a day. And if it's not available, and we've shown how vulnerable these supply chains are globally, not only to weather, but to these random events called COVID or a financial breakdown. There are numerous strings that our supply chains rely on, and they've all got to be working, much like a puppet master and a marionette. If one string is broken, it just looks wonky. It doesn't work right. And I believe that the global supply chain for food and other supplies is on the verge of losing 1, 2, or maybe even 3 of those strings, and it's something that we need to talk about. It's something that we need to prepare for. Because we all eat, and it is nearly a daily requirement. All right, so thanks for stopping by and talking about, letting me talk about weather. Here's the dichotomy: hot out west and cool in the Midwest. As we hit 18 to 22 August, that seems to be kind of that zone. So that's Scott's weather and food. This is and should be, in my opinion, a topic of the election, but we seem to be concerned with far more petty, literally petty topics. May be important to others, but if there's no food on the table, then we tend to redirect our discussion. All right, we'll hit that with another perspective coming up at 6 o'clock Mountain. I will see you then. Until then, hey, blue sky out there. Keep looking up.